4,000 calories a day, man. I'm not gaining weight. What's going on? Be like, what? You're not gaining weight. So you're not in a surplus. That's what's going on. No mystery. You have to eat more. Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization. Let's talk about common mistakes in muscle gain dieting. You want to get huge. You want to get jacked. You want to get swole. You want to get yoked. You want to get cock diesel. I never liked that term. Why are we saying cock so much, folks? Let's take it easy. How many mistakes do I have listed here? 10 common muscle gain diet mistakes, not training mistakes, but diet mistakes. You want to gain muscle and you're eating in a certain way, but you could be making some of these mistakes. Let's make sure you're not. Mistake number 1 is not knowing your maintenance and thus being mathematically unable to generate a surplus because you have no idea what your maintenance is. And by definition, a surplus is something above maintenance. But if you don't know this part, how the hell do you know what to eat in order to have a surplus? This seems like a make-believe common mistake that I made up just to be able to have some filler in a YouTube video to get more ads out of it. But I swear to God, it's not true. And you guys have been in the gym many, many years. You know it's not true because people talk to you in the gym and they say shit like this. They'll be like, yeah, man, just trying to fucking get these gains, you know? And you're like, that's right, man. You know, like you're between sets of hack squat. You have nothing. Literally, you're imprisoned. You have nowhere to go except talk to the person who just started talking to you. And they're like, yeah, man, it's all about diet, right? And you're like, yeah, that's right, man. Diet's super important. And then you make the mistake of getting curious and you go, what's your diet like? You want to help somebody. And I'm just trying to eat. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, to quote one of our good friends, yeah. So how do you know if you're eating enough? Nobody lost, nobody found. No question asked, no question answered. You got to have an understanding of maintenance before you generate a surplus. How do you do this? You try to monitor your food intake and even just the 3 macros, proteins, carbs, fats every day, even just calories every day for 1 or 2 weeks, eat relatively normal and just eat how you always eat, and which I assume you just normally have roughly a maintenance of body weight. And then you get a value out of that. So 3,500 calories, and then you go from there. Critical. And if you don't do this and you're not gaining muscle that you want, there's no mystery because how the hell would you know if you're eating enough? Point number 2, mistake number 2, is not setting a surplus and actually sticking to it. If you want to gain muscle, a surplus is critical because can you gain? Yes, for a time. But once you get sufficiently lean or sufficiently well-trained, gaintaining either works way not as good as muscle gain on purpose, gaining weight, eating in a surplus, or it just doesn't work at all. So if you have a surplus that you've generated, say you know your maintenance is 3,000 calories, you're not making that first mistake. And then you generate a surplus of 300 calories per day on average. So 3,300 calories is what you're eating. You have to get to that surplus and you have to stick to it. If you don't have a target of how many calories you have to eat, then you just can train hard for weeks and weeks and be accidentally at maintenance or accidentally in a small deficit and actually gain no muscle at all. Imagine eating protein and getting into the gym and getting hard workouts and doing all the things. And at the end of 12 weeks, the reality is you didn't really put on any muscle because you just simply didn't eat enough. That's so dumb. It's so wasteful and it's so easy to stop. Mistake number 3, not measuring your weight, getting on the scale regularly, and thus not knowing if you are in a surplus. The way to find out, because here's the thing, even if you do point number 2, set a surplus and stick to it, that's all theoretical. You assume that you're roughly correct in your measurement of the maintenance, 3,000 calories. You assume that you have imposed 3,300 surplus. But remember, food labels are off, often by as much as 20% or more. Remember that your thermogenesis is different based on different times of the year, different hormonal states, how much you walk around versus not. If you're tracking your steps exactly, yes, Communist Party of China, I know exactly where I am at all times. All these things change and your assumption that you're in a surplus may be incorrect. You may be in a bigger surplus than you thought you were and you may be gaining too much fat. You may be in a smaller surplus than you thought you were and not gaining as much muscle as you like. You may not be in a surplus at all. How do you fundamentally know that you're in a surplus? The assumption is good, but you got to know some stuff about it. Just like, if you're like in a war and you're firing rockets at something, you can assume that you got the coordinates right, but at some point it's probably good to look at the satellite imaging to see if you're hitting anything. And if you're not, looks like your assumptions are wrong. Very simple concept, which lots of people just end up not doing. So then you get the following social media question, which I get all the time, and I'm sure you guys get a bunch yourselves, is like, hey man, I've been eating, insert calorie number here that sounds impressive to that person. 4,000 calories. Been eating 4,000 calories a day, man. I'm not gaining weight. What's going on? Be like, what? What's going on? You're not gaining weight. So you're not in a surplus. That's what's going on. No mystery. You have to eat more. But that person already did a really good thing. They're saying they're not gaining weight. Some people will say even less. They'll say, I'm eating at 4,000 calories a day, but I don't think I'm getting any bigger or stronger. Like, oh, gotcha. Has your weight been going up over time? And some people will be like, well, I'm not sure. Folks, no bueno. You want to do the shit right, and it's not that hard. What you have to do is measure your body weight, probably every day or every other day. Get a nice weekly average going. Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets can do this for you with minimum effort. You don't even have to download the RP Diet Coach app. Shameless plug. And it's totally good to go. And if you're gaining weight at roughly the appropriate rate, you're awesome, you're golden, you're doing everything right. But if you're not, you can fix it. If you're not weighing yourself regularly, you cannot possibly be legitimately confused about what's going on. You can be illegitimately confused, which means confused for no good reason. Next, people sometimes impose a surplus and they'll detect even how much weight they're gaining, but they won't change it at the margins when they know there's something wrong. So people will say, yeah, man, I've been gaining 2 pounds a week for the last few weeks. Is that good? Like, what do you think? I think it's too much. I'm getting too fat. What should I do? Reduce the surplus. And then you get into that weird fear that mostly guys have of that if they have a certain surplus and they're gaining at too fast of a rate and getting too fat, they think that dialing that surplus down is the same logical equivalent as just going into a deficit. Remember, a slower rate of gain is still a rate of gain. And in many cases, it's a rate of gain that's leaner and healthier and all the good things. So if you're eating 4,000 calories a day and you're getting too fat and you know that shit, you don't have to go back to 3,000 and go back to maintenance. You could just go to 3,500 or even 3,750 if you're super averse to gaining slow, and then you can make that adjustment. Another thing is this works in both directions. People will set a surplus, they'll monitor their weight, and they'll do shit like this. This is more of, on average, a female problem, a female mistake. They'll say 2,000 is my baseline maintenance, 2,300 is what I'm going to eat at. And they eat at 2,300, but it's summertime now, and they're getting more steps, and they're getting more muscular, so their metabolism's increasing a little bit. Their training is at a new level. It's super hard. And they also picked up like a recreational hobby. They're playing tennis with grandma a few times a week. And they started at 130 pounds, and then they're at 130, and then they're at 130, and they're at 130, and they're at 129, and they're at 132, and they're at 129 again, they're at 131, they're at 130. And that's like a few multiple weeks of weight averages summed up. They're not gaining weight. No matter what, they're not actually at a surplus or at a very, very small one at that. And so many people in that situation will be like, yeah, like this is going on. I imposed a surplus. And they'll do this. They go, I'm not gaining weight, but my training's going really well. I feel like I'm getting bigger. So I'm just going to keep it here for XYZ amount of time. Folks, the purpose of a muscle gain phase is to gain muscle. The absolute best, no debate way to do that is to gain weight. I don't mean 50 pounds a fucking day. I mean half a pound per week, a pound per week, something minimal. But if you're not seeing that in your averages, you have to eat more food. And I know you may be averse to that idea. And you may think, well, there's some stuff going on under the hood, body water, I'm still getting tissue. And you may be right. You may still be gaining tissue, but much less tissue than you could be gaining if you weren't playing so goddamn much and you actually ate more food. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. I had a situation in my last mass phase, I'm on active rest right now, where I was eating 4,500 calories per day, which to me is a lot of food. It's fucking annoying. And my weight chart showed me that I should actually be eating more like 4,700 if I'm going to gain the weight I need to. I didn't want to hear that shit. I'm like, fuck, man, I can barely eat anything at all. I'm on fucking insulin and this and that to try to eat more food. It's awful. that shit is real life. And I have to be honest with myself and change my surplus if my weight data isn't showing me that I'm gaining as fast. And I know that sounds pedantic as fuck, but people do it all the time. Even I considered it. I told myself, yeah, shit's still happening under the hood. I'm like, I'm still gaining muscle somehow. Bullshit. Yeah, somehow, but I'm not here to gain muscle somehow. I'm here to do a real good job. And that means being uncomfortable when the time calls for it. Number 5, using single data points, daily data points of body weight versus weekly averages. Weekly averages tell you the story of what's happening with your tissue, muscle and fat, your actual body of molecules that are not water. Daily fluctuations tell you a body water story. So some people will impose a surplus and 2 or 3 days later, they'll gain 5 pounds. And they go, fuck, oh my God, I'm just getting super fat doing this. Hold on. What does the weekly average tell us? And they're like, well, I don't know yet. It hasn't been a week. Well, then shut the fuck up and do what you're supposed to for a week. Now, after a week of weights, you get a weekly average. Your last week, maybe you weighed 179 pounds. You went up to 187 on Wednesday of this week, but then your weight cooled off and you realize it was just a bunch of Chinese food, had tons of salt in it, and you get as low as 177 on Friday. The weekend goes normally, and it turns out that at the end of this week, your weekly weight average is 179.2. You gain 0.2 pounds. Slow clap. Not terrible. It's the start of something. Definitely, likely in a surplus. It's not the end of the world. But you remember the same person that on Wednesday, because of that super high weigh-in from just one weird day of body water, you wanted to pull back the surplus. If you pulled it back, and mind you, this is near and dear to my heart, that's why I'm so passionate to it. I've done all these things before, made all these mistakes. You pull that surplus down, and at the end of the week, you actually lose weight. And you're like, oh, fuck, what did I do wrong? And the answer is, you should have stuck to the process. Hashtag trust the process. You don't need to trust shit. Trust but verify. And that verify takes 1 week of weight averages. And then you know what's going on. And then the next week, you'll know better what's going on. If you cannot plug and play, if you cannot assume that you're taking a good guess and be patient enough to wait 1 whole week to modify your results, this whole game is not for you. Just, I can go, Scott the video guy, what are kids doing nowadays that's not bodybuilding? TikTok. Go on TikTok and make a dancing video where you think that people are watching your dances because you're a good dancer, but really they're just touching themselves. Are we allowed to say that on YouTube? We'll find out. Time to get canceled. All right. Next, your weekly average could be good, but your pulsatility can be extreme. Your body gains muscle best when every day, more or less, you present a small surplus. Just enough extra food to feed the muscles, not so much extra food to feed the fat a ton. Weekly average, 1 pound of gain. Hey, success. There's another way to gain a pound on average. Early in the week, you run a deficit. Small deficit, you lose some fat, but you barely build any muscle or not at all. Second half of the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, etc., weekend, you generate like an enormous surplus. You lost a little bit of fat earlier in the week, didn't gain much muscle. Later in the week, you introduce this huge surplus and you gain a fuck-zillion amount of fat because huge surpluses almost always go mostly to fat. Your muscle, you gain a little bit of muscle towards the end of that week because the surplus after a certain number of excess calories, probably anything north of 500 calories, almost all the rest of the calories just go straight to fat and only a certain amount, your muscle tops out really quick for how much it can accept and utilize and grow. So if you're a little bit of a deficit here and a huge surplus here, yes, the average weight gain is going to be whatever, a pound, but a very small fraction of that is muscle because a bunch of the week you weren't even gaining muscle and the other part of the week you're gaining mostly fat. That kind of pulsatility can really elude you because on the weekly averages, you're doing just fine. But it turns out that much of the week, because you're not eating enough, you're not taking the opportunity to gain muscle. And the other half of the week, you're eating too much and you're getting too much fat. It sucks. It sucks. But the best way to gain muscle is consistently presenting a small average surplus day in, day, week in, week out. And this like idea that like one day you eat 2,000 calories if your maintenance is 3,000 and another day you eat, 7,000 and it all averages out to be okay. It's really just a recipe for on the first day not gaining a lot of muscle, and on the second day gaining a shitload of disproportionate fat. So if your diet looks like this, try to get it a little bit more like this. Yeah, sure, it's okay to eat a little bit more on the weekends. Yeah, it's okay to undereat a little bit early in the week. But if you really, really make that extreme, you're missing out. Next, eating mostly junk. I mean, this is what's the meme for this? The dreamer bulk or whatever. Not sure. Sounds like a nightmare bulk to me. But, you're over dieted and you got really lean. And then you're like, oh man, I'm just going to eat cookies and drink protein shakes and ice cream sandwiches or whatever else you want to eat. It's cool. But if you eat mostly junk, you can do two things. Even if you set your calories right, but it's tons of junk, mostly junk, your performance is going to suck. One of my best friends and I, we were visiting a friend in California a generation ago, and I was already training. I was like 220, drug-free and shit. And we were eating a lot of fast food out there. And I just remember eating the day before I had 3 of those KFC famous bowls, the mashed potato bowls. It's so good. And the next day I went, did high rep deadlifts, and him and I both did a couple sets, and we looked at each other, we're like, are we at altitude or something? It was in Irvine, California, no fucking altitude. And it's just between sets, I was not sick. It was just poisoned by junk food. There is such a thing as too much. So you can't run a high performance machine on junk food. Eating mostly healthy food is a good idea. So it's not going to get great gym performances. And that's bad. And then it's also not great for your health. So yes, junk food is cool to eat in moderation on a muscle gain phase, but most of your foods should still be healthy whole foods. Point number 8, very related, but the opposite. Never eating junk. You'll have folks that are like, I'm fucking on a muscle gain phase. I'm serious as a fucking heart attack. Clean food 24/7, brother. Hey, respect. If you can survive that grind for the rest of your bodybuilding career, amazing. But most people, dare I say almost all people, need a bit of fun in their life, need a bit of fun foods. And so a real good way to go about that is eat mostly healthy food, but a few times a week, I do it once or twice a week on a muscle gain phase, you throw in a cheat meal. And it's really awesome, and it costs you almost nothing on the downsides, and it's so great psychologically, it's so fun, that by the time you get to your fat loss phase, you've had more than enough cheating and you can really grind super clean eating on a fat loss phase. Because if you don't have some cheat meals on your muscle gain phase, when the fuck are you going to have cheat meals? Maintenance, I guess, sure. But it's kind of fun to be able to train hard as fuck and then eat a cheat meal and understand that a lot of it's getting in the muscles to help you gain muscle. It's kind of there's a really virtuous cycle there. And it feels really great. And clearly not going to be able to do it on a fat loss phase. Cheating a lot on active rest or maintenance feels strange because you're like, oh, I know I'll have to eat less later to make up for this. And there's something about it where if you're ever going to have cheat meals, muscle gain phase is the time to do it. And if you're so psychotic about only ever eating clean, psychologically, you're going to pay the cost of that in most cases sooner rather than later. You're going to burn out. You're going to be done with the sport. And it's trippy too because I've seen some of my contemporaries who came up at the same time as I did. And a lot of them finished bodybuilding and they're just done with it because they went so hardcore into it from day one. They just burned out. They're like, I'm tired of eating clean. I'm tired of doing all these workouts that I don't want to do. Whereas what I did was I took a more relaxed journey. And every year that I was in bodybuilding, I got a little bit more serious about it. But that means I never burned out because I was always having plenty of fun foods and always training in a way that was effective, but also fun. So don't forget that that's a big thing. And at the end of the day, this whole thing we're doing is a fucking hobby. It's a leisure activity. And if it's not fun, maybe you sort of zigged where you should have zagged or something like that. Enjoy some fun foods on a muscle gain phase. Enjoy those foods on a bulk. It's going to be something that reinvigorates you psychologically and keeps the process fun. You'll be able to do it for long enough to actually get super jacked. All right. 2 more. Mini cutting too often. Unless you're at 15% body fat or so as a competitive bodybuilder, or 20 to 25+% as a recreational lifter, add 10% or so if you're a female to these numbers, you can easily continue to gain without needing to mini cut and break up your momentum because you'll still gain an unbelievable amount of muscle and not a ton of fat. Yes, if you get ultra fat, it's all bad. And then maybe you'll even start gaining more fat and less muscle. But up until those points, you're good to go. What we do see with people is they get to 11% body fat and they're like, it's mini cut time. Breaks up their momentum like crazy. And it's just good to just really kind of sit in that vat of food and training and momentum for as long as you can. I mean, when you're starting to get too fat, yes, a mini cut every 8 to 12 weeks is totally fine. But if you're mini cutting every 4 to 6 weeks, gee whiz, you're just paranoid. And the thing is, if you were lean and you like being lean and you got a little thickalicious on your mass phase, that's nothing a 4 to 6 week mini cut can't fix completely. And then you're fucking ripped again. Body fat's not something that once you gain a little bit too much of it, that's it. It's there forever. No way, not even close. So it's okay to let that momentum keep going until you're convincingly fat enough to where you need a mini cut. And the paranoia of always mini cutting all the time is just a fat phobia, and it's irrational and will not give you good long-term results. Not as good as you could have had if you let your mass phases, if you really leaned into them. Last common muscle gain diet mistake is continuing to bulk once your momentum is all but gone. If you're no longer getting much stronger week to week in the gym, if you're super tired and beat up and fatigued, if every week you notice that you're notably fatter but no more notably muscular, stop gaining, especially if it's been months and months. And a lot of this thing, so real quick, I'll just finish the thought. Stop gaining, do an 8 to 12 week normal fat loss phase, maintenance phase at the end to clear some fatigue or something, or maintenance phase and then 8 to 12 week fat loss phase, and then start massing again. Doing a fat loss phase won't fuck you up. It's not going to cost you a ton of muscle or any at all. It just resets the living fuck out of you. And sometimes that maintenance phase cools off so much training fatigue that it lets you go for months afterwards training super fucking hard. If you can no longer train ultra hard, if you can no longer demonstrate that you're gaining lots of muscle and you're starting to gain a lot of fat, if you're no longer getting stronger in the gym, it's too much fatigue, be it diet fatigue or training fatigue or some combination of both. It's time to chill. It's time to maintain. It's time to cool off. It's time to mini cut or even do a real cut. And then it's time to come back up again. A lot of the times people get in trouble with this is they'll set themselves a, dare I say, mildly arbitrary duration goal for massing or weight gain goal. They'll say this, I'm going to mass from 160 to 180. By the time they reach 175, it's a giant dumpster fire of joints hurt. I'm not getting stronger. I'm just getting fatter. Fuck this. But they have this 180 in their head and they go, I got to get to 180. Don't do it. Don't fucking do it because you will get to 180. That's not that hard. The average American weighs like 330 by now or some shit. You ain't even a real size person yet in the United States. You go to Texas, you're half the size of a real person. Gaining weight is not hard. Gaining muscle is quite difficult. And it has to occur in a high quality, manageable fatigue environment. And if that environment is no longer with you, it's time to do active rest or maintenance or whatever to clear the air to let it go again. The other way people get in trouble is setting themselves duration goals. Like a very common question I get for some goddamn reason is, Dr. Mike, can I bulk for a year straight? I'm like, yes, but it's tough because fatigue will accumulate much faster than a year. You probably just want to do some maintaining or some mini cutting at some point during that time. And there are ways to wiggle around it, but why? Why? What is it about a year that you are so attached to? And if the momentum is crushing it for a year, hey, fuck, sweet, go for a year and a half. But if the momentum is clearly gone by month 8, you gotta retune the system, right? And there has to be a compelling reason of why you are massing for as long as you are. And just setting yourself a goal and going, it's cool in the sense that like you're a person of principle. He is a man of focus, of principle, that fucking John Wick shit. Scott, the video guy, remember that shit? Of indomitable will, of terrible fake Russian accent by non-native speaker. In any case, you're all John Wicked out. I get it. John Wick says he's going to get to 180. He's going to get to 180. Hell or high water. That's cool. But you can be that kind of person that's perseverant and really goal-oriented and doesn't lie to themselves, but at the same time be a bit more of a logician and understand that like when the system is no longer in a properly functioning state, it's not about willpower anymore. Nobody's doubting your shit. Bring it back around. It's like if John Wick is shooting people and it's working, great, keep shooting. But if like a tank rolls up with 900 heavily armed troops, John Wick might egress to like come back around and go through the sewer tunnels with the homeless gang or whatever. Ridiculous movie. I love that shit. I love watching John Wick high because I don't have to make sense out of anything. Trying to make sense out of John Wick's a bad idea. In any case, even John Wick pulls back when the time comes. And so it's one of these situations where, yes, I understand you told yourself I'm going to bulk for a year. I'm going to bulk till I get to 180. If it's a motivational problem, hey, listen, that's between you and God, which is to say John Wick again. But if it's a thing where you're just like pointlessly like trying to bash through this barrier and you don't have to, and there's smarter ways to do the same thing, go with a smarter way. And I guess that really is the big point of today's talk is be smart. Don't be stupid. Do all the good things. Don't do the bad things. Enjoy your muscle gain. And as usual, if I see you on the street, I'll have my butler say hi to you. I don't talk to regular people anymore. Shit. See you next time.